No gunshots, no declarations. But the British royal family is waging a silent war. On one side, William and Kate, the embodiment of youth and modernity adored by the public. On the other, Camilla, a woman once underestimated, yet who has quietly held power for years. As King Charles's health falters, two spheres of influence collide. And amidst it all, Princess Anne, the only woman who understands that if no one yields this family, could truly fracture. A fine drizzle fell on London's cobblestone streets, casting a misty veil over the ancient domes of Buckingham Palace. Outside, the relentless flash of reporters' cameras flickered, capturing every moment of the royal faces appearing on the balcony. On the front pages of prominent newspapers, images of William and Kate, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, dominated the spotlight. They smiled hand in hand, the epitome of a new royalty, youthful, modern, and approachable. Beneath bold headlines like "The Future of the Monarchy," the public seemed to have already bestowed upon them an invisible crown. But a few streets away at Clarence House, a different story was quietly unfolding. In a drawing room adorned with Persian rugs and 18th century oil paintings, Camilla, Duchess of Cornwall, raised a glass of red wine, her sharp gaze sweeping over her guests. This was no official royal gathering, no announcement in the press, no lenses daring to linger nearby. It was a private affair reserved for the closest of confidants, Camilla's own family, long-standing friends, and a handful of influential figures from the elite who remained loyal to her. Soft laughter and the clink of glasses filled the air, but no one mentioned the events unfolding outside on the newsstands. They didn't need to. The old power, the authority forged through years of Charles and Camilla operating behind the scenes, was still present, silent but unshaken. Camilla sat at the head of the table, her deep green silk dress accentuating her regal poise. In her 70s, she retained the air of a woman who never allowed herself to be underestimated. Across from her, Tom Parker Bowles, her son, recounted a tale from a recent hunting trip in Gloucestershire. The guests around her laughed heartily, but Camilla only offered a faint smile. Her eyes roamed the room, pausing at a portrait of Queen Elizabeth II hanging on the wall. The painting was a reminder the monarchy was more than just the faces in the papers. It was a machine, and Camilla had spent a lifetime learning to navigate its gears. Meanwhile, at Kensington Palace, Kate sat before a mirror in her private quarters, her hand gently brushing her glossy brown hair. A turquoise dress prepared for tonight's charity event hung on a wooden rack. Outside, William was on the phone, his voice low and resolute. "We need to show up to prove the monarchy is still strong," he said, unclear whether he was convincing the person on the other end or himself. Kate turned her eyes, meeting William's through the mirror. No words were spoken, but they understood each other. They were not just a beloved royal couple. They were the symbol of a future the public was clamoring for, and they knew it. In another corner of London, Princess Anne, the silver-haired woman with a steely demeanor, sat in a small office at St. James's Palace. Before her was a stack of documents, schedules of royal engagements, charity reports, and a few clippings from daily newspapers. Anne disliked reading the press, but she forced herself to do so. Not to know what the public was saying, but to understand what they weren't. She flipped through the front page of the Daily Mail, where William and Kate were hailed as the light of the monarchy. Then her eyes shifted to a smaller article, almost overshadowed, about Camilla's reception at Clarence House. No one called it a war, no one dared. But Anne, with over 7 decades in the royal family, knew the truth. A monarchy was being split in two, and no one wanted to admit it. She folded the paper and set it aside. On the desk, a cold cup of tea sat untouched. Anne didn't drink it. She stood leaving the room, her gray wool coat hugging her lean frame. There was too much to do, too many events to attend, too many silences to preserve. Anne wasn't one for meddling, but she understood that if the monarchy was to survive, someone needed to stand at the divide. Not to pick a side, but to keep it from collapsing. In the darkness of a London evening, 2 beams of light shone. One from Kensington Palace, where William and Kate prepared to step into the spotlight. The other from Clarence House, where Camilla quietly fortified her stronghold. No one declared war, no one needed to. Every glance, every smile, every word was a move in a chess game with no end. On a rare sunny Saturday morning in autumn, London's light filtered through the tall stained glass windows, of the Victoria and Albert Museum, where a major charity event was underway. Red carpet stretched across the floor, white floral arrangements were meticulously placed, and soft orchestral music floated from a live ensemble. This was the launch of a fund to support disadvantaged children, a project Kate had spent months preparing. The public, press, and elite were all in attendance, cameras poised to capture every moment. But beneath the formal elegance, a subtle tension simmered like faint smoke, invisible to the eye, yet felt by all. Kate entered the main hall, her pale blue silk dress clinging to her slender frame, her brown hair cascading in perfect waves. Her smile was gentle, but her eyes were sharp, scanning the crowd like a strategist on a chessboard. William walked beside her, his navy suit accentuating his tall stature, his face calm but his lips slightly pursed, a sign of vigilance. They paused to shake hands with key guests, exchanging polite greetings, but both knew the real moment of this morning lay not in photos or speeches. Across the room, Camilla appeared alone. Her deep burgundy dress hugged her figure, paired with a string of shimmering pearls, giving her the aura of a queen without a throne. She moved slowly each step, a declaration of her presence. Charles was absent, officially due to health concerns, but Camilla needed no one to shine. She paused, greeting long-standing donors with a warm voice and a courteous smile that masked her true emotions. But when her eyes met William and Kate's across the room, time seemed to freeze. "Camilla's here," Kate whispered, her voice soft but icy, as if announcing an approaching storm. William nodded slightly, his hand gently squeezing her elbow, a gesture of reassurance but also a reminder. "We're ready for this." They approached each other like two armies on a battlefield adorned with chandeliers and flowers. The crowd parted instinctively, camera lenses swiveled, but no one dared snap a shot at that moment. The space between them narrowed until they stood face to face, mere steps apart. William, Kate, Camilla spoke first, her voice smooth as velvet, every syllable calculated. "How wonderful to see you both here. This event looks quite impressive." "Thank you," Camilla, William replied, his tone low and steady, his eyes never leaving hers. "We're deeply committed to this cause. Children need better opportunities, and we want to ensure that." A seemingly innocuous remark, but its subtext was clear. "We're doing what the monarchy needs, leading, changing, and being loved." Camilla tilted her head, her smile unwavering, but her eyes flashed with a cold glint. "Absolutely agree," she said, turning to Kate. "Kate, you've done wonderfully. The public seems to adore your efforts. Truly admirable." Kate smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "Thank you, Camilla. We just want to bring out the best for everyone. The monarchy, after all, is about responsibility, isn't it?" Her response was a veiled dagger wrapped in soft silk. Camilla didn't flinch, but her hand tightened slightly around her champagne flute. "Indeed," she said, her voice dropping a fraction. "Responsibility and tradition. One cannot exist without the other." The exchange lasted mere seconds, but felt as heavy as a battle. Those nearby, though unable to hear clearly, sensed the tension. A reporter whispered to a colleague, "It's like watching two tigers face off." On the surface, there were no harsh words, no actions out of line. Only glances. William's steady as stone, Kate's sharp as a blade, and Camilla's deep and unreadable. Kate turned to a nearby guest, starting a new conversation, but her mind lingered on Camilla. "She didn't come just to greet us," she thought. "She came to remind us she's still here." William, meanwhile, kept Camilla in his peripheral vision, noting her unshaken composure. She moved on, shaking hands, smiling, as if the encounter had been a fleeting moment. In a corner of the room, another figure observed it all. Princess Anne, dressed in a simple yet elegant gray suit, stood beside a donor, listening to his plans for a new hospital. But her eyes were elsewhere. She watched William and Kate, then Camilla, and finally let out a sigh barely audible. Anne knew better than anyone that exchanges like this were never just words. They were the first stones in an avalanche, and if not careful, it could bury them all. As the event ended, William and Kate departed to the crowd's applause, their images certain to grace tomorrow's front pages. Camilla left more quietly, a sleek black car waiting outside. But in her mind this morning was no defeat. It was a statement. "I am still part of this monarchy, and I won't go easily." On the drive back to Kensington Palace, Kate stared out the car window, her gaze distant. "She won't stop William," she said, her voice low. William took her hand but didn't respond immediately. He knew she was right, and he knew this war had only just begun. King Edward VII's hospital stood quietly in the heart of London, concealed behind ancient oak trees and grey stone walls. It was the royal family's refuge when absolute privacy was needed, and tonight it became the secret destination of King Charles III. No official announcements, no headlines in the papers. Only a sleek black car gliding through the back gate carrying a king in his third year of reign, yet seemingly losing his grip on power. In a hospital room equipped like a five-star hotel, Charles lay in bed, a pale blue robe covering most of his frail frame. Medical machines beeped steadily, but their sound couldn't drown out the heavy silence in the room. Beside him, Camilla sat on a velvet-upholstered chair, her hands clasped tightly, her eyes red-rimmed, but refusing to let a single tear fall. She was accustomed to moments like these, long nights by Charles's side, as he battled declining health and the invisible pressures of the crown. Camilla, Charles spoke, his voice hoarse and weak, but still carrying the authority of a man groomed his entire life to be king. Do you see it, power? It isn't taken. It just slips through your fingers like sand. Camilla gripped his hand tightly, but her gaze drifted to the window, where the city's lights flickered like lost stars. Don't say that, Charles, she replied, her voice low but firm. You are still the king. No one can change that. Charles gave a faint, weary smile tinged with bitterness. A king in name, Camilla. But out there they no longer call my name. They call for William. They call for Kate. He paused, his breathing labored. And perhaps they're right. His words cut like a knife, not because they were surprising, but because they were true. Camilla knew it. She had seen how the public cheered when William and Kate appeared, how the media hailed them as the monarchy's saviors. But she couldn't accept it. Not out of jealousy, but because she had spent her life protecting Charles, helping him ascend the throne after years of being overlooked. Now when he was finally king, she couldn't bear the thought that his reign was dissolving before her eyes. While Charles lay there a few streets away, William stood before a crowd of reporters at Kensington Palace. An official announcement had just been made. The royal family would fund a new education program for rural children. No one mentioned Charles. No one asked about his health. William, with his warm, steady voice and resolute gaze, spoke of the nation's future and the monarchy's responsibility. Kate stood beside him, her smile gentle, but her eyes sharp, as if gauging every reaction from the crowd. They were the perfect image of a modern monarchy, and the public loved them for it. But in the hospital room, Camilla felt the bitter truth. Every public decision William made, every speech he delivered, was a step further from Charles. She turned back to her husband, seeing his eyes closed, his breathing steadier, but his face still etched with the lines of exhaustion. You need rest, she said, standing to adjust the blanket over him. But deep down, she knew it wasn't sleep that would save Charles. No medicine could restore the power slipping away. She stepped into the hallway where an aide waited with a hot cup of tea. Any news from Kensington, Camilla asked, her voice calm but edged with ice. The aide hesitated, then replied, The Duke and Duchess just announced a new fund, ma'am. The press is very positive. Camilla nodded. She said nothing more, only glanced back through the small window in the hospital room door. Charles lay there, a king forgotten in his own monarchy. In the dark of night, the hospital remained lit, but its glow couldn't dispel the shadow enveloping Charles's reign. And Camilla, no matter how resilient, began to feel the chill of a monarchy drifting away from her. The rain had stopped, leaving shimmering puddles on London streets. In the dim light of the afternoon, Princess Anne stepped out of a community center in East London, where she had just attended the opening of a youth job training program. Her olive green coat hugged her lean, resilient frame, and her silver hair was neatly tied back as always. A small crowd waved, not with the fervor that greeted William and Kate, but with sincerity. Anne responded with a faint smile and a polite nod before slipping into the waiting black car. To her, this was just another workday, the third consecutive day that week, filled with back-to-back engagements, from charity events to meetings with patronages. But in Anne's mind, no moment was truly ordinary. She knew what was happening within the royal family, though no one spoke it aloud. The divide between Clarence House and Kensington Palace was growing like a crack in an ancient wall, visible only to those inside. William and Kate were crafting a new royal image beloved by the public and celebrated by the press. Camilla, though less visible, clung to her influence through long-standing connections and a quiet but potent presence. And Charles the King, Anne had watched grow from a shy boy, now seemed little more than a shadow of himself. Anne didn't choose sides. She couldn't, and she didn't want to. As the daughter of Queen Elizabeth II, she had learned from her mother that the monarchy survived not through internal battles, but through stability, even if that stability was built on painful compromises. Yet balancing the two courts was no easy task, and Anne, strong as she was, felt the weight of that responsibility. That afternoon, Anne attended an art exhibition at Somerset House, an event patronized by Camilla. The atmosphere was markedly different from Kate's charity events. Fewer reporters, fewer camera flashes, but a strong presence of elite power long-standing donors, old friends of Charles and Camilla, and a few discreet politicians. Camilla stood at the room's center, her olive silk dress accentuating her regal demeanor, her warm voice resonating as she introduced the artworks. But Anne saw it immediately. This was no mere exhibition. It was a reminder that Camilla still held sway, still had loyal allies, and had no intention of stepping back. "Anne, how lovely to see you here," Camilla said when they met her, smile impeccable, but her eyes sharp. "I know how busy you are with your own engagements." "You know I never miss an important event," Anne replied, her tone even but confident. "Art has always been part of the monarchy, and you've done well to preserve it." The compliment was diplomatic, but both understood its deeper meaning. Anne wasn't there to support Camilla or oppose William. She was there to ensure the monarchy, however divided, maintained an outward unity. Camilla nodded slightly as if accepting Anne's neutrality, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of disappointment. She wanted more, an ally, someone to take her side. But Anne was not one to be drawn into any faction. The next day, Anne attended another event, this time at a school in Manchester, where Kate was launching a campaign to raise awareness about children's mental health. The atmosphere was vibrant and energetic. Children waved flags, parents clapped, and the press captured every moment of Kate kneeling to chat with a little girl or smiling radiantly beside William. Anne stood in the background observing. She noticed how Kate moved. Every step, every gesture calculated to convey warmth while retaining authority. Kate was more than a duchess. She was a symbol, and she knew it. "Princess Anne, thank you for coming," Kate said during a private moment, her voice warm but tinged with caution. "Your presence always lends strength to events like these." "I just do what needs doing," Kate Anne replied, her eyes locking on to Kate's as if trying to read her thoughts. "The monarchy is a machine, and we're all part of it." Kate smiled, but the smile wasn't entirely genuine. "True," she said, "but sometimes the machine needs refreshing. Don't you think?" Anne didn't respond immediately. She looked at Kate, then at William, who was chatting with a group of teachers nearby. They were young, beloved, and seizing the chance to shape the future. But Anne also knew that renewal, if careless, could destroy what had stood for centuries. "Be careful what you wish to change, Kate," she said at last, her voice low but pointed. "Not everything old is useless." Kate nodded, but her gaze didn't waver. She understood Anne's warning, but had no intention of stopping. Anne left the event soon after, leaving Kate and William to shine under the spotlight. On the drive back to London, she sat quietly, hands clasped in her lap. She thought of Charles, Camilla, William, and Kate, and of herself, the only one trying to keep it all from falling apart. Anne wasn't sentimental. She disliked drama and empty words. But in that moment, as the sunset painted the sky red, she felt an indescribable sadness. The monarchy wasn't just palaces or crowns. It was her family, and that family was fracturing day by day, hour by hour. Anne didn't know how long she could maintain the balance, but she knew she wouldn't give up. Not for glory, but for honor. The honor of a woman who had devoted her life to serving the crown. London's late October air carried the chill of autumn, but in newsrooms and on social media platforms, a media storm was raging. Following William and Kate's charity fund launch at the Victoria and Albert Museum and Camilla's discreet art event at Somerset House, newspapers dissected every detail. The Guardian ran a lengthy piece comparing William and Kate's radiant modernity to Camilla's formal tradition. The Daily Mail went further, posing a bold question on its front page. "Royal divide, two courts clash in silence." Articles cited the subtle tensions at the events, from the icy glances between Camilla and Kate to Charles's conspicuous absence, attributed to resting for health reasons. The public, always eager for royal drama, jumped in. "William and Kate are the future. They get us," one user wrote on social media, alongside a photo of Kate kneeling to talk to a child. Another post defended Camilla. "She's the keeper of tradition. Without her, the monarchy would just be a reality show." Debates spread from coffee shops to online forums, and for the first time people openly asked, is the royal family fracturing inside Kensington Palace? William sat in his study, flipping through a stack of articles on his desk. The window's light highlighted the tense lines on his face. He wasn't surprised by the media's reaction. He and Kate had anticipated it, but the growing divide worried him, not for the public's sake, but for his family. He turned to Kate, seated across from him with a cup of tea, her eyes sharp but weary. "We can't let this go on," William said, his voice low but resolute. "The public is watching our every move, and what do they see? A monarchy split in two. We need to talk, all of us." Kate nodded, setting her tea down. "You're right, but Camilla won't agree easily. She's clinging to what's left of her power." William stood pacing to the window, gazing out at the misty Kensington gardens. "Then we have to push her," he said. "Not by fighting, but by showing her we can't keep living in this ambiguity. I'll propose a family meeting. Just us. You, me, Camilla, Charles, and maybe Anne." Kate raised an eyebrow, her expression skeptical. "You think she'll agree?" "I don't know," William admitted, turning back to her. "But we have to try. If we don't, the press will tear us apart before we do it ourselves." At Clarence's house, Camilla read the letter in the drawing room, the fireplace's glow accentuating the deeper lines on her face after days of strain. She set the letter down, her eyes cold. Beside her, an aide stood silent, awaiting her response. "They want a meeting," Camilla said, her voice low and laced with sarcasm. "They think a chat will fix everything." "How naive." The aide hesitated. "Ma'am, perhaps it's a chance to clear things up." Camilla turned her gaze sharp as a blade. "Clear things up." William doesn't want clarity. He wants me to admit he's in charge. I won't give him that satisfaction. She stood, moving to the fireplace, her hand gripping the chair's armrest. "Charles isn't well enough for meetings like this, and I won't let him be dragged into a confrontation created by his own son." A reply was sent the next day, brief and icy. Camilla declined the invitation, citing that the king's health does not permit engaging in stressful discussions at this time. The letter ended with a formal note. "We believe the monarchy will best serve the nation by respecting each person's role." William read the letter in his office, his hand crumpling the paper. "She's not just refusing," he told Kate, his voice thick with restrained anger. "She's challenging us." Kate, seated in an armchair, sighed. "We knew she would. But this can't go on forever, William. The public is watching, and they won't stop asking questions until we give them an answer." That afternoon, Kate met Anne, an unscheduled visit. They sat in a small drawing room, just the two of them, with antique paintings on the walls and the steady tick of a clock. Kate, in an elegant gray wool dress, got straight to the point. "Aunt Anne," she said, her voice low but firm, "we can't keep up this ambiguity. The monarchy is being seen as a joke. Either we work together, all of us, or everything will fall apart." Anne looked at Kate, her gaze calm but penetrating, as if reading her every thought. She didn't respond immediately, only tilted her head, her hands clasped in her lap. Kate pressed on, her tone sharper. "Camilla refused to meet us. She's trying to keep her distance, but that only makes things worse. You're the only one who can talk to both sides." "What will you do?" Anne remained silent, her eyes drifting to a portrait of Queen Elizabeth II on the wall. She thought of her mother, how she had held the monarchy together through storms far greater than this. But this time, Anne knew it wasn't simple. William and Kate wanted reform, but lacked patience. Camilla wanted to protect Charles, but was isolating herself. And Charles, who should have been the center of it all, was fading away. Anne finally said, her voice low, "And even you're right that this ambiguity can't last forever. But healing isn't something done in a meeting or with a plea. The monarchy doesn't break because of the public, but because we no longer trust each other." Kate opened her mouth to speak, but Anne raised a hand to stop her. "I don't have the answer, Kate, not today. But I'll keep doing what I've always done, keeping this machine running until one of you finds a way." Kate left feeling both frustrated and confused. She knew Anne wasn't on anyone's side, but she also knew Anne's silence wasn't the answer she wanted. In Anne's heart, a quiet sadness spread. She stood moving to the window, gazing at London's gray sky. The monarchy, her family stood at a crossroads. And no matter how hard she tried, she wasn't sure she could hold it all together. Winter cloaked London in a thick fog, as if the city itself were hiding its secrets. Over the past months, the British royal family had become the focus of attention, not for loud scandals or public dramas, but for a quiet transfer of power almost imperceptible unless closely observed. No official statements, no abdication, no documents from Buckingham Palace confirming a change. But every event, every face in the papers, every handshake and glance at ceremonies told the story. The reign of King Charles III, though still existing in name, had given way to a new future. Buckingham Palace, once a symbol of permanence, now felt oddly hollow, like a house too large for its few occupants. In a grand room adorned with red carpets and royal portraits, Princess Anne stood alone, her gaze sweeping over the paintings on the walls. From Henry VIII to Queen Victoria, from Queen Elizabeth II to her father King George VI, each face told a tale of power, duty, and sometimes sacrifice. The light from tall windows illuminated her silver hair, accentuating her stern yet resolute face. Anne rarely came here, but today she felt compelled, not to find answers, but to face the truth. She paused before the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, her mother who had steered the monarchy through decades of turmoil. "How did you do it?" Anne whispered, her voice so low it nearly blended with the air. "How did you hold it all together when we only know how to push each other apart?" There was no reply, only the Queen's stern gaze from the canvas, a reminder that the monarchy didn't break from scandals, but from silent divides. In recent weeks, William and Kate had solidified their position undeniably. They were everywhere, from charity events to international receptions, from inspiring speeches to warm family photos with their 3 children, George, Charlotte, and Louis. The press called them the monarchy of the new era, and the public loved their accessibility, modernity, and commitment to change. Every move was calculated not just to build their image, but to send a message they were ready to lead, even if the crown still rested on Charles's head. Charles, meanwhile, became increasingly absent. His health, though not publicly detailed, was clearly declining. His rare appearances, a brief speech at a ceremony or a photo with Camilla, weren't enough to reclaim his spotlight. The public, though still respectful, no longer saw him as the monarchy's center. Instead, they looked to William and Kate, who seemed to have become the de facto heirs, though no one dared say it aloud. Camilla, once Charles's steadfast shield, also began to retreat. The discreet receptions at Clarence House grew rarer, and the loyal faces that once gathered around her appeared less often. Not because they turned away, but because they too sensed the inevitable shift. Camilla maintained her resilient facade, still appearing with a polite smile and sharp gaze, but inside a quiet pain grew. She had fought her entire life to see Charles crowned, to prove she deserved to stand beside him. But now she realized that the throne, though his, no longer held the same meaning. One afternoon at Clarence House, Camilla sat in the drawing room, a cold cup of tea in her hand. Before her was a copy of The Times, featuring William and Kate at an international event, smiling alongside world leaders. The bold headline read, "Royalty shines, William and Kate represent the future." Camilla folded the paper and set it aside. She stood moving to the window, gazing at the fog-draped garden. "We tried, Charles," she whispered, though he wasn't there. "But maybe we never really had a chance." At Kensington Palace, William and Kate sat in their family sitting room, the fire's glow casting dancing shadows on the walls. Papers about upcoming projects lay on the table, but their minds were elsewhere. Kate looked at William, her eyes gentle but firm. "We did the right thing, didn't we?" she asked, her voice low. "We didn't take anything. We just did what was needed." William nodded, but his gaze was distant. "I don't want Father to feel abandoned," he said, his voice heavy. "But he can't go on. Not like this. And the public. They need us." Kate took his hand, squeezing gently. "We're not just doing this for the public, William. We're doing it for the monarchy, for George, Charlotte, Louis. If we don't step up now, there'll be nothing left for them. William looked at her, and in that moment he felt the strength of the woman beside him. Not just a wife, but a partner, a strategist, a future queen. He nodded, and they resumed their work, preparing for a future they both knew was near. At Buckingham Palace, Anne stepped out of the portrait room, her hands clasped behind her back. She walked through the long corridors, her footsteps echoing as a reminder of the emptiness. The monarchy she knew had changed, not through a revolution, but through small steps, quiet decisions, and unbridgeable divides. Charles was still king, but only in name. William and Kate, though not yet official, had become the monarchy's heart. And Camilla, the woman once at the center of so much controversy, was now fading into the shadows. Anne paused before a large door leading to the balcony where kings and queens had stood to greet crowds. She didn't open it, just stood there, her gaze drifting over the heavy curtains. "The monarchy doesn't break," she whispered, as if convincing herself. "It just changes." But in her heart, she knew the truth. The monarchy didn't break from loud scandals or public battles. It broke from silent divides between father and son, wife and husband, past and future. Anne turned, stepping into the corridor's darkness, carrying the sorrow of one who had seen too much but could not stop. Outside, London lived on, the fog lingered, and the world watched. One reign had ended, not with a bang, but with a sigh. And a new reign with William and Kate at its core was beginning. Like, share, and subscribe to follow the gripping saga of the British royal family and stay updated on every twist and turn.